There we go. Okay, seems like we are live now, Ryan, correct? I see that. Okay, so we are live Tuesday, August 11th, 6 p.m. Avon Economic Development Commission live meeting. We will start with just a quick roll call for commission members just to verify that everybody's present. Matt Isbell here, president, present. Vanessa Pryor.
Here, present.
And Jessica Henson.
Here.
And then we also have in attendance Dan Taylor, town lawyer. I don't know if you need to say present. I see him shake his head. John Taylor, economic development director.
I'm here.
And Ryan Cannon. Ryan, I don't know your official title now. Is it assistant interim town manager? Interim town manager. There we go. Okay. So I sent out a quick agenda and meeting minutes from the last meeting. So we do have quorum. Just wanted to kind of get the group together. We haven't all talked here for a while. So I sent out minutes that John Taylor provided. Were just some recap of some of the initiatives that he was working on. In addition, Jessica Henson took meeting minutes from the last meeting as well. So those have been shared with the group. If anybody wants to comment on those for edit or any comments, otherwise we can motion to approve.
I motion to approve.
Jessica Henson motions. Anybody second?
I second.
Vanessa seconds. Okay, meeting minutes are approved. So we will move on to old business. John, I'll kind of let you chime in on some of these as you see fit. But the last time we all met, there was a resolution that was supposed to be presented and approved on June 23rd as it pertained to the Mormon Church and some of the work south of town. I don't know if maybe you want to update on that and the resolution and if it passed and if there's anything to discuss and update the group on.
Ryan, would you like to comment whether this was passed by the town council?
Sorry, I'm not sure what resolution it is. John, what are we referring to?
Matt, do you have it with you?
I'll pull up the meeting minutes here. You said 100 South reconstruction, June 22nd, should have a resolution from the Mormon Church on June 23rd. Those were just from your notes that you provided the commission. So I don't know if that was a town resolution or a resolution from the Mormon Church. It didn't specify.
I think it refers to a resolution in the condemnation case of the take. I think a resolution meaning a settlement.
Yeah, resolving.
Yeah, resolving, not a document. And there was a that did occur. There was an agreement reached on the taking. The Browning Duke, and Mormon Church are three condemnation cases that relate to the County Road 100 South project. And Ryan can fill you in later, but I think that phrase resolution referred to where we were in those cases.
So, pardon me, I'm not a lawyer, but can you break that down a little bit? What does that mean? What's the condemnation and what were we resolving?
Okay, fair enough. When we have a project like this where we're going to widen a road, we need to acquire additional right-of-way, which means we need to go in and buy land from the landowners who are along the existing road. And some of them, and so we engage right-of-way acquisition companies, and they go out and they try to negotiate that. Many property owners reach an agreement that way. We pay them money, and then we move the right-of-way lines wider back so that we can build the much larger road. Some parties we cannot reach an agreement with, and when that occurs, the town files a condemnation case. The law says that if we need land for right-of-way for roads, we can force that issue. We can sue people and make them give us their land. We still have to compensate them. And so what happens in a condemnation case is there are two phases. The first is the take, which means we ask the court to rule that the town is entitled to the property. And the court, when the court does that, it tells the town, fine, you can do that. This seems to be a public purpose. We're going to have the property appraised, and then the town has to tender to the court the appraised value of the land. The second phase of the case is called damages, and that is that if the landowner doesn't agree with the amount of the appraisal, we may end up having a trial over the issue of what the land is worth. But what John was reporting to was that on June 22nd and 23rd, we had hearings in the courts on the first issue, which was the take. And in all three of the pending cases, one is we call Duke All Points, one we call Duke Browning, one we call the Mormon Church. In all three of those, the court ruled that we had the authority to take the property for a road project of this kind. And subsequently, we've reached an agreement with the Mormon Church on the value and all issues. So that matter is going to be resolved. The cases against Duke All Points and Duke Browning are still kind of pending. Those appraisals come in, then the town will tender to the court the money equal to the appraised amount. Then Ryan will be able to go ahead with this project, even though the court case may or may not go on forward. And so that's I hope that explains it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No, that's actually very helpful. So that doesn't hold up the right of way, construction and planning, all that for the development that John's working on with the Mormon Church.
It does not. I mean, in some respects, it just slows us down a little bit when we have to go through that process. But we anticipate that we'll get the final acquisitions on those here shortly, and we'll tender the money to the court, and then the town will move on with their project.
And that's all fairly normal and customary for this type of development. I mean, some of this is kind of new to us, so
It is.
Forgive me for asking stupid questions.
No, these are good questions. I would say that in most cases like this, about 80% of landowners reach an agreement pretty easily with you. And then 20% of the cases end up going to condemnation. In this case, we are dealing with some obviously large companies, large entities. That's who we tend to have issues with. But Ryan and I've had some individual residential landowners who wouldn't agree, and we've had to have condemnation cases with them as well. But so in most road projects anyway, it's about an 80-20 between an agreement and not having an agreement. And so, yeah, it's very normal part of the process, something Ryan and I have had to do many times, and we just work our way through those steps, and then property is transferred to the town, then Ryan can begin construction.
Interesting. And then, I mean, Duke Browning, so that's the development along the south side of the road
Correct.
towards Plainfield? Okay.
Yeah. And the Mormon Church is
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
Mormon Church, you reached an agreement, but the other two were in phase 2.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we hope to reach agreements with them. In the interim, we can always resolve the case at any time, but right now we're working through the appraisal process, and we're still negotiating with them though.
Okay. And I know John's been working closely with the Mormon Church. I'm assuming that makes them a little bit more of a willing partner, since aren't the parcels of land that you're looking at developing, I mean, they own the actual real estate as well, right?
Well, they own their property, but Duke Browning also owns a big site.
Okay. Well, if no one has nothing else, maybe if we could just get a quick update on the Avon Landing construction.
Well, they put everything out to bid, and they got no bidders. So they're gonna have to rebid this. The problem is the timeline. They'd like to have it done by the end of the year, and all the companies that build roads right now are just very busy. And so they got no bidders on the first round. So it'll go back out.
So that's interesting. So you I mean, you said they put it out to bid. I'm assuming that's all the horizontal and all the construction just for right-of-way roads and infrastructure.
Road, water, and sewer.
Okay. And then I got an email from Jasmine, and I stopped by town hall to sign the economic development agreement late last week. I don't know, maybe if, because Vanessa and Jessica just probably weren't on that email. Can you, or Ryan or John or Dan, maybe just walk through what the economic development agreement is and what happens when that is executed?
Dan, would you like to?
I'll do my best. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ryan, you want to do that?
yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll explain it. So it's our agreement with the developer of Avon Landing, and it basically lays out the terms. We're doing a developer purchase bond, which means the developer is buying the bond, and the revenue that is generated from their development used to pay back the bond. And so the agreement that you signed is basically implementing that agreement, putting it into place. And basically then what we'll do is we'll sell a bond, and the developer will actually give us the money from the bond. They'll actually buy the bond. And then we'll have a trustee, and that trustee will then pay the expenses for the development. And then we've pledged TIF. And so you guys did have a role in that. If you recall, we had an economic development meeting, and you guys had to approve a portion of that process in order for that to move forward. So they've signed it now. We've signed it. It required the signature of the Economic Development Commission, the Redevelopment Commission, and the Town Council. So all three groups had to sign it. And so basically now that's in place. Once they get bids, then they'll tell us what the amount is, and then we'll sell the bonds. So those are the next steps moving forward. And then they can go to construction.
If I might explain something Ryan said, when I first heard this years ago, I didn't know what anybody meant about developer bonds. So let me explain that. But essentially what the town is doing is we want to incentivize this project. This project's going to have commercial frontage on Ronald Reagan, industrial, perhaps apartments and other things on both sides of Ronald Reagan. The developer wanted the town to offset some of the upfront costs, and in order to promote the project, what we did was we said, well, look, we'll issue this bond. They're essentially going to put all the money up front to do the initial development. The Avon Landing people are going to do that. And then we're going to reimburse them later through the TIF district. And so if you think about it, really what these developer bonds are is they're really funding the money, and then we're going to use TIF to reimburse them for some of those initial upfront construction costs. Does that make sense? That's kind of confusing.
It does.
How we talk about it. But.
And what this does is this keeps the town from having to invest a tremendous amount of money up front. We're looking at future taxes that will pay the TIF bond, that the developer will own. So the developer not only gets paid back the bond money, but he also acquires the interest that the bond pays. So he makes a little money on the bond, but instead of the town coming up and just putting $6 million into the property, we're allowing the future taxes from what he develops on the property to pay for that infrastructure.
So in essence, the developer is paying his own bond because it's his tax money, the increment, whatever he creates there, that's what comes back to him. Essentially, from our perspective, it's very revenue neutral. It doesn't really cost us anything. but it also allows, in terms of the big picture, it allows the town to save that money, that's $6 million in John's example, for other projects that might come in. So we've got Avon Landing, which is a developer which has the wherewithal really to pay for their own upfront cost, but they want a little help, little incentive. That by doing it this way, what I call a back end agreement, then what that does is the town puts no money into later. It frees up the bonding capacity of the town for other things that may happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's why the town likes it. It's not a huge commitment, doesn't draw cash down, doesn't hurt our bonding capacity. And all the while, we get, it's win-win for everybody. So this technique has been used a couple times. It was used in the YMCA, right, Ryan?
Tory Point.
Yeah, it was used in the YMCA project as just another example of a time when the developer bought the bond.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to get us off topic. This is some curiosity, but are the future TIF revenues, are those stipulated, or is it based on the developer has some signed lease agreements for tenants that are going to use that space that are going to pay those tax revenues?
Well, he actually doesn't have anything signed right now. It's what he goes out and finds to build inside that park, where he finds a tenant that pays a lease or purchases the building and then pays the taxes that we will collect to pay the bond back. Now, the other thing, remember when we...
Yeah, that's the benefit to the town, Matt, is if it never develops, then the developer doesn't get paid his money back. So
Correct.
He has the incentive to develop the property, whereas if the town goes out the money, we have no way to incentivize him developing the property. So this way, if he never builds anything and he never signs anything, he never gets paid back his money. So that's the exact reason why we do it.
And
I
Matt,
have a question. What are, so I know we've talked about a lot of the positive things that can come from this, but there has to be some sort of just plain devil's advocate here. What's the risk? Dan?
no risk to the town.
There's really no risk to us because if the developer, our biggest fear when we have these development agreements is that the developer will do nothing. We'll leave town, take our money, run away. And so we don't have that risk at all. The real hard part for the town on all these projects is making sure we're getting the type of development that we want.
Right.
We'll do that primarily. We did a little bit of that in the structure of this deal, but also through planning and zoning, we'll make sure that we have made sure that the approvals are very specific about what can go there. And to me, that's the town's biggest risk, is that the developer will try to push on to the town something the town doesn't want, some type of development. But we've controlled that on the planning and zoning side.
So what kind of time limits does the developer have to develop it? How long is it tied up? So let's say if he doesn't develop in how many years, how long is that going to be tied up?
It could be tied up for a long time. The agreement has 2 phases it contemplates. And so obviously, once a developer starts doing infrastructure, he will want it to develop as fast as possible, which will influence his decision-making when he enters into negotiations with potential buyers or lessors. It should incentivize him to not be too difficult, because he needs to get people on there. He needs to get things built so that there is actually a tax revenue stream there. And that only comes from new buildings, only comes from new improvements to the land. And so what is envisioned is that they will do phase 1, and then shortly after they get started with this, we expect them to come back and ask for a phase 2 agreement and probably do the same thing again. Wouldn't you think, John and Ryan?
Yes.
So we actually think it'll happen pretty quickly. And that is, again, the way the transaction is structured, there would be no reason for the developer not to go as fast as they can.
And if you remember when Dan did the training for this commission, the one thing he talked about was that the main focus for this commission was bonds that were tax deferred, which is what tax exempt, I'm sorry.
Kind of
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear somebody.
You cut out, Vanessa, I think.
I don't see her moving.
I think she's frozen.
Uh-oh. Oh, she just
She'll come back
dropped.
in. But the one thing that Dan talked about was that the one focus for this commission was tax deferred bonds. And that's the one thing that you vote on. There's nothing else that this commission will ever really vote on. It's tax deferred bonds. When we have other projects in the town, if the bonds are not tax exempt or tax deferred, they won't even come in front of this commission. So as Dan indicated that night, the one focus of this organization is to approve and send on to the town council a recommendation that we allow these bonds to be sold.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question around that. I think it's more of if any of us, and I'm going to let Jessica and Vanessa speak for themselves, if I'm going to vote on tax deferred bonds for anything, I don't want to do it in the blind. So I just prefer to get all of the upfront information as it originates so that when it comes time to make those votes that we can do it to clear conscience.
Right.
Yeah. I will second that and follow that with, I understand that is our only technical logistics of our position on a commission. That's the only thing we're going to rubber stamp. However, specifically based on, a town, based on the Indiana code for an economic development commission, we should have a clear understanding of what we're approving. We maybe got 72-page document that, yes, we were explaining in our training that is our role, is to approve these tax exempt bonds. However, we didn't have the proper or enough time to understand what we were looking at. And so that's really like the purpose of this, is so that we understand and the town understands more what is involved with the Economic Development Commission. Not a lot of people know what it is. Even us, we're told it's just the tax exempt bonds, but on the other hand, what kind of due diligence are we liable for if we're approving something and we don't really understand what led up to it? So I think that's really why we're asking all these questions. We understand. We don't have to cover that anymore. Saying that that's our only job. I think we have a due diligence to understand it a bit deeper.
Okay. I think we're good on Avon Landing. The PPE company outreach response, just
That was a
John, if you want to update us on how that went.
That was a bust. We spoke to everybody but 8 companies, and none of the companies seemed to be concerned about their growth, nor were they looking to invest anywhere but where they currently sit.
I have a good question on that real quick. I love this ambition going after these companies. I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. Quick question: who controls Avon social media? Is there a specific person that's responsible for that? Email-based marketing, or do we know?
Ryan?
Yeah, currently our deputy chief is doing the Facebook. Previously, the town manager did it.
Okay, what about, do we have like a MailChimp or any kind of, email marketing system? Are we just doing the physical mailers?
We're just doing the physical mailers. We also have, our website is built to provide updates to people who sign up through our website. So there's that service as well.
Okay. I'm just wondering for you, John, how you're, bringing awareness to the town of Avon, and we're looking for businesses. How are we getting our name out there?
Well, it's been difficult because up until this point, the town has really not had something to market in terms of available properties. People that I deal with are site selectors around the country, and the site selectors get inundated by every person like me across the country. So until you have something to show, they ask that they just not be bothered. But now that we're going to have marketing opportunities for both Avon Landing and the Mormon property, and hopefully Duke Browning, we'll be putting together marketing pieces on those, on that, sending it out to site selectors around the country. And then our economic development website is active. It's not live because we're making small corrections that we're finding things that don't work. Hopefully it will go live next week. And once that goes live, then the people that have developed it will also send out to site selectors around the country that there's a website about economic development in the town of Avon. And on that website, we'll have pieces of property and buildings that are available within the town.
Well, that answers that next follow-up.
And Matt, I think I just answered your question, your next thing.
You totally did. I just was getting ready to say, like, hey, that was the next thing. So we do have a website. Is that part of the town website, or is it?
No, this is totally
different?
separate. It'll be, trying to think what the name of it is. ChooseAvonIndiana.gov. I'm sorry,
Okay.
.com. And like I say, I have access to it and a couple other people do, as we're making all these small changes to make sure it functions properly. And the developer said he hopes to have this live next week.
What did you
Okay,
say
so
that
that's
it was?
I'm sorry?
What did you say it was? Choose Avon, Indiana?
ChooseAvonIndiana.com.
So that's a separate domain, but that's a town funded
It'll be
and
linked to
supported
the
website.
town website.
That's great. Okay. Well, I can't wait to see that.
And then it will also have links to the state, IEDC, Indiana Economic Development Corporation, the county website for the Hendricks County Economic Development Partnership, and a few others.
That's great. Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing that for sure. I mean, new information as it relates to the town of Avon and economic development out on the public domain would be a breath of fresh air for sure.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that covers everything under old business. Just generally speaking, new business. John, I'll start with you. Is there anything specific that's worth discussing since we've just talked on June 22nd, new initiatives, outreach and strategies that we're working on?
No, actually, nothing's really changed. Just trying to get the website up and reaching out to the PPE companies. This morning,
Okay.
I spent 5 hours up in Avon trying to get a list together of all the empty available buildings from the companies that have closed doors and not reopened. This morning, I came across 23 buildings or 23 slots, because some of them are in the strip malls, and reached out to some of the people that lease buildings in town. They're going to give me some stuff that we can put on our economic development website.
So have we had that many local businesses officially close their doors since?
We've had a number
obviously
that closed and did not reopen.
Do you know those
Very
statistics
unfortunate.
off the top of your head, or?
Well, what I've got are mostly just addresses of the buildings that are open now available.
Is
Are
that
those going to be
something that's
listed like on the, sorry,
accessible?
on the website or?
That'll be when you go into the sites and buildings, you'll be able to find everything that's available in Avon.
And Matt, I think
Okay.
also this really goes to what Vanessa said. And Vanessa, I think your point is well taken about the flow of information, because you guys come to the end, and then we kind Ryan and John and I have been living those projects for sometimes a year. We don't always explain it. So let's get to the front end. On the Mormon church property, we expect that they'll be filing a planned unit development for that development. May have already filed it, but very soon they'll be giving the town their ideas and conceptual designs for what's going to happen on that project on 100 South. And so we'll try to keep you guys apprised of what that looks like as they submit it. And then the planned unit process is a long and multi-step process. But again, it sounds to me that the sooner we can give you information, share it with you, the better. And so we can try to remember that on the staff level to push that information through to you. And even if it hasn't been approved yet, just kind of show you what they're thinking. We know it's going to be an industrial site, probably a multi-tenant industrial site. And the staff is already working with how the traffic is going to circulate and whatever development issues there are. So that process will happen at the Plan Commission level and the town council. And so there'll be a lot of activity there in these early stages. And so that's a good example of, okay, now that this starts to happen, we probably need to push that information out to you guys. You can begin to work through it long before it gets to you.
Yes.
That's much appreciated. Yeah, and just from, the Avon Landing thing, I mean, that was obviously well in the works before any of us had any tenure on the commission. And speaking personally, I wasn't going to slow the wheels of progress on that. I mean, but now that we have a chance to get some formality along the lines of the commission and the team here and getting to know what we're working on, I mean, I'm just would like to know as these deals come up. I mean, I'm sure you guys get inundated by local developers and businesses to pitch, I want to come here, do this, do that. But as it pertains to the town and what the town and the council and the commission and John are trying to do, right? I'm assuming, or I would hope, that everything we're doing ties back to some bigger strategy. Like, this is the type of development we're courting, and these guys have made it through some vetting process. They're not just the first people to show up with money and like, hey, we want your land, right? So the Mormon deal sounds super exciting, and I know John's put a lot of work into that, and you guys have been on it. So what boxes is it checking that are, high level strategic for this is where the town's trying to go? These are the type of developments that we want to get. That's really all I care to stand. So that, I mean, I live here just like everybody else. And when people ask like, hey, why is this a good thing for us? I'd like to be able to at least know the talking points of, hey, here's the boxes this is checking. This is why it's good for people that live here. And maybe I don't articulate that the right way, but that's the way that it processes in my head.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the way that I've read, and Dan, you can correct me, but the way I've read at least the Indiana code for a town commission is, really it's just about a second set of eyes to ensure that there's accountability and that, we as a whole are doing our due diligence when we approve these type of things. It's not saying we're trying to, direct how the town is going to go, but it's really just to protect us, but then also to protect our town and our residents to, ensure that it's not just a vacuum laser view, blinders on approach, that there are, a second set, the commission taking a look at it. So I think that's where we just feel like we need a little bit more visibility and insight. I think we owe it to the commission, and we also owe it to the town to be able to say, yes, we've reviewed this, we understand it, we didn't just, rubber stamp it.
I agree. And just to give you just a preview on what Matt was talking about, one of the boxes it checks is the town has sought to diversify its tax base for a long time because it's primarily residential. And Ryan, I'm going to ask Ryan to jump in, but I think I heard this number the other night that the Mormon site alone, we expect the assessed value when the construction is complete. Ryan, is it 125 million? Is that the number I heard? Now Ryan's froze, but I think, I mean, it would be these,
Yeah, we've done about $120 million of infrastructure.
yeah, and then this one development will create $125 million of assessed value, just this one site. And then obviously the Browning projects and the Duke projects will have that multiplying effect and start to strongly diversify the tax base in a significant way. And with tax caps, that is like more bang for your buck because residential property can only be taxed at 1%. These properties as commercial could be, or industrial could be taxed at 3%. So in terms of lowering taxes or, in the future for residents of Avon, this type of development that is envisioned along 100 South checks this box, tax-based diversification. It also will create jobs, obviously, which is another box that it'll check. And then transportation-wise, Ryan, this entire road is planned to handle the traffic from these sites and to shepherd them east to Ronald Reagan Parkway and not let them come west to Dan Jones. And so those three boxes, I would, if in terms of talking points, right off the bat, good development, huge AV impact, huge job impact, and not doesn't create a burden on transportation. So those are some things, Matt, just right off the bat that we've been talking about. And I think, again, I think you guys are right. You guys, we need to really give you as much information as we can. And then when we do get the end, your jobs will be so much easier because you'll have the information you need.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
The other thing about the transportation is it should cut down on the problems inside the town because right now the county sends 37,000 people a day outside the county to work. And if 1,000 of those or 2,000 of those are coming out of Avon, if we can find 500 jobs within the city where people can go to instead of having to leave the town, you have that much less traffic. Getting on 36 every morning and coming back 36 every night.
Cool. This may be an unrelated question, but it's a curiosity of mine. What's the balance between it? And I understand the math between the 3% versus the 1%, and that is a no-brainer. Like how do you navigate between, from an economic development standpoint, when you focus on an industrial commercial base, which is the higher tax revenue, versus maybe more quality of life items, downtowns, parks, roads, bridges, and stuff that are more for, creature comfort that draws people in and want to live here versus industrial, which is higher tax revenue? How do you balance those things?
Well, the jobs will help to bring people into town that will want to work here and live here. And if you're able to make $45,000, $50,000, $60,000 inside the town versus traveling to downtown Indianapolis for an office job that pays $30,000 to $35,000 a year, your quality of life does improve. If we create better roads to handle traffic better, that improves quality of life. With a better tax base, you can do more things in the parks. I mean, it's all a huge circle, and economic development is all part of everything that happens inside that circle.
I might suggest too, Matt, one of the things that happened a long time ago is in the town's comprehensive planning, they were always really sensitive to the concept that you wanted to be careful about industrial development in a community that was so heavily residential. And so they took great pains to make sure that where industrial development took place was good, what needed to be limited, that it needed to be limited to certain places in the town. And the town has done a great job they identified this area south of CSX a long time ago and said, that would work. And they identified the old airport where Avon Landing is going to be a long time ago. It was kind of away from other things. But the town has really been careful about that. And that might go to your point of just, you don't want to have the industrial development in a way where it begins to fight against your residential quality of life and your schools. So I really think that one of the big pieces about that is, although we want to go great, with great intensity to get what economic development we can, we also, on the planning side of the world in the town, they've kind of put up some walls to say, well, here's where we want it though. And we don't want there to be conflicting uses, or we don't want to make nice subdivisions not so nice because we put factories next to them. And there's been a lot of talk about that. If you haven't looked at the comprehensive plan, you should try to get it on the town website and take a look, because there's a lot of talk about that issue.
That's good advice. I may do that before the next meeting, then I can have a little more context around some of this.
The development
I looked at the needs assessment that was done. I think it was, Jessica, was that 2018? Fredericks County needs assessment that was performed, or whatever. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it was called, but essentially it was, asked the residents what they wanted. You all know what I'm referring to.
Sounds like the comprehensive plan.
Oh, it maybe it is. Maybe it is. So, and that was, a few of the fears, if you will. Is it the redevelopment commission or the planning commission? Who is the commission that is deciding kind of where we go? While, I know we're kind of focused, or John, you're kind of focused, but are there any plans for mixed use development? Is that something where we've got, like the town center thing, type of development where we have residential, condos, townhomes? I know we need a variety of rooftops to attract corporations, companies to come, small business too. Are we focused on small business as well as industrial, or it's just, John, your main focus is industrial?
Well, the big focus is industrial. The secondary focus is trying to save the businesses that are already here. Now, some of the businesses that have closed, and when I worked for the state, we lost some major corporations and it comes down to a business decision for them to stay. It's not always because you're too far away from an interstate or there are not enough people available in your area. Sometimes it comes down to a company looks at all the financials. If they've got to close 3 facilities out of 10, they take the 3 that are the least profitable and they save the 7 that puts the most money into the pockets of the people that invest in their companies. So it really, I've said many times to many people that just because somebody decides to leave your community, it's not a reflection of the community. It's a reflection of their business model. It's a reflection of what their decisions within their companies are to decide where their investment should be and where their investment shouldn't be. So when we lose a company, today, a lot of it's because of COVID. They closed for 3 or 4 months and they don't have enough money to open back up. And that's the big thing with the restaurants. When companies reduce their workforce under something like COVID, they're still paying their workers. When a restaurant closes down, they have 0 revenue. They're not serving anybody. And so when they take a look at, can we open back up? They've been paying bills all along out of reserves. And if the reserves aren't strong enough, then they make the decision not to open back up. So just because somebody decides to leave the town of Avon or the town of Plainfield. It's not because they don't get along with the government or the traffic's too much. There are many, many decisions that go into that business to make up their model inside their corporate headquarters as to where to shut down.
So it sounds like some of your focus is on saving the current small businesses that are here. That's a portion of your focus in your role.
That and the countywide organization does an awful lot of outreach throughout the county. They have last year they had a $1 million fund that they were using to help retrain workers, to help businesses to rewrite business plans. Those aren't funds that we have in the town. They had gotten a federal grant to do that. They administered the grant. The HCEDP did a C conference last year. It was on education for companies that are involved in transportation and logistics, because that's a big thing in the county. We had the conference, had 125 people there on Thursday. COVID hit Thursday night, and Friday morning we had 61 people there. I mean, that Thursday night is when it went national news that COVID was a thing that's going to be closing businesses and we need to be scared and all those things. But it was a great conference up to that morning when people left. But the region, I call it the regional group because it's the countywide group. They do a lot of things that we don't have the funds to do or the manpower to do. That's why it's important that our community continue to support them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if anybody has anything else under new business. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I'll just open it up to the town members and John, the director, any other matters that may come before the commission that are worthy of noting. Otherwise, we'll move.
Probably not right now.
Hey, Matt,
Okay.
can I just add one thing really quick?
I suppose I'll allow that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Hey, I just want to, I hear what you guys are saying about keeping you guys informed. And so I will tell you right now that you should expect that the Mormon Church, that there will be another developer purchase bond. And so you should expect that down the road. It may be a couple of months, but you should expect that down the road. There will probably also be another developer purchase bond potentially on the Mormon Church property along Ronald Reagan Parkway. And then we've also had some discussions with a developer, another developer along Ronald Reagan Parkway south of 100 South. John Lazaro owns the property. And we've had some discussions with several different developers over the last couple of years about doing a developer purchase bond there as well. And then the last one that I would probably share with you is there is someone who's discussing a development at the corner of County Road 900 in US 36 next to the YMCA. And there have been some discussions with them as well. So there are several other economic development projects. They kind of come and go. So they pop up and then they go away and then they come back as something different. So I would expect projects in those areas to be coming to you guys in the future. So John and I will work on getting you guys some exhibits and showing you some maps and providing you the information of where those will be, so you guys have a feel for those in advance of them showing up. Thank you.
No, that's good. I appreciate that. And I understand discretion when things are super early. I mean, there's no reason to get into detail. I'll just say conceptually. So when it's, and all those sound like they're very early, what types of things, and maybe this might be a Dan question, what types of things should we be concerned about from a exploratory or education or just understanding at this time, you know, as deals like that mature?
I think, yeah, location, type of business, what is the impact of job creation? You know, you only have so much land, so you want to really try to get more jobs, not fewer jobs. AV impact, as I mentioned earlier, what kind of assessed value do we end up with, and how does that impact the town? That's a huge thing. And then what incentives are being asked for? And this is kind of the John's world, but what kinds of incentives are being asked for, and what if the town is kind of willing to grant them, then what's the town's justification for that? Why do we think this is a good idea? Again, Vanessa asked a good question earlier, and I just want to come back to it, but yeah, who decides? Well, the truth is that when somebody wants to bring a project in, the planning commission usually vets it first. And then ultimately planning and zoning is going to be determined by the town council. If it's in our taxing district, we call the TIF. Redevelopment Commission will be involved in it and trying to vet whether they believe that use is appropriate from a job creation standpoint. And then if there are incentives involved, then usually the Redevelopment Commission, your commission, and or the redevelopment authority are also involved, and all of those groups have to be satisfied that this is a good thing. And so as those projects come through, all the boards and commissions touch it at a different time, but ultimately everybody will touch that throughout that process. And the way the statute is, you guys can't approve something on your own. The redevelopment commission can't approve projects on their own, and the redevelopment authority cannot do it on their own. So there is this mandatory cooperation and collaboration that takes place. And although each of you have different roles, nobody can really make these things happen. It's like a baseball team. It takes every entity involved because you all do different things. You have different roles. So what we'd like to see is, everybody thinking it's whatever has come before the town is a good idea, been properly vetted, makes economic sense. It'll be good for the community. So those are the things I'd look for, economic impact, tax impact, job creation, what are the quality of jobs, average pay, number of positions, what's it going to look like? I mean, it sounds simple, but what's it going to look like? And traffic, and how's it going to affect our roads? All of those things are the things I think you should be focusing on first. And then incentive packages. Why is this incentive package good for us? We don't want to give away too much. We don't want to be so cheap that we can't attract businesses. Those are the things I think about.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for touching on that again. My biggest concern and kind of what I would like to be able to see and feel confident when I, approve something, or looking at like the financial risk. So I obviously know that there's a great deal of people to vet these deals on the finance side. Do we have any liability if we're approving something that we did not, fully understand on the financing side of things?
Well, you don't. The town may be at risk for having money out of its coffers that could have been better used, and that's the thing that we had. We had a project come to us years ago that really I was suspicious about, and a member of the redevelopment commission who's an accountant, well, he's really more of a controller sort of guy. He and I did some background work to find out more about the company, and that led us to recommend no. And then later we were vindicated by what happened later in another town. And so, yeah, you're right. There are risks, and the risk involves the town giving away its money for no good reason, entering into agreements that may be really long-term agreements that could haunt us for years. And so, yeah, between the staff and the town as a financial advisor and all of us just doing our work, the right way. But I got curious and just got on the internet and started looking at SEC filings and everything I could. And while I was doing that, somebody else was doing the same thing on the RDC. I just didn't know it. And then he and I got together and started asking some hard questions. And from my experience, you know, and I'm the lawyer, so I'm nervous about everything.
Yeah.
I'm the person, I'm the risk avoider. So I'm nervous about everything, but you know, in all of our, what everyone brings to the table in each of your worlds, you bring, what you do in the real world brings something to a benefit to us. But by all of us working together and asking the right questions, sometimes asking hard questions, and sometimes the question, what do we know about these people? Like I had some past experience with Avon Landings, and I felt good about them. I mean, in a couple different places. And then, I mean, I felt like they would do what they say, and I felt better about that. But there have been some in the past, yeah, where I've said, look, I'm not so sure, and there's some public information out there we should know. So we all need to do that due diligence and not be afraid to ask hard questions. And Greg Gertas, who's the town's financial advisor and has been for at least 20 years, helps us with some of that, but also we just all try to work together.
Okay. I feel much better about this now. So thank you, Dan and John, Ryan.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's a
guys.
good explanation.
And after a little while, it'll get, it's hard when you start, but it'll get easier. But I mean, I appreciate the three of you, I appreciate your passion. And I also know you're talented. I know that you bring things to the table. That's not always true in my work and what I experience. So I appreciate that. But so I think that it's exciting to see this kind of interest.
Thank you.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, we are right at 1 hour. I'll just do one last call if anybody has anything they want to bring up or discuss. John, Dan, Ryan, Vanessa, Jessica.
Should we be checking YouTube to see if there are any questions? I don't know that there would be that many people since this was rescheduled, and I don't know that our meetings are on the town calendar. Is that it looks like they're like not classified as a meeting or something. So do we need to check? I don't know how to do that.
I checked YouTube and there weren't any comments.
Okay.
Jessica's on top of it. Okay. Well, if that's it, then I will ask if anyone wants to motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I
Vanessa
second.
motions. Anyone second? Jessica seconds. Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Good meeting. This was very
Thank you.
informative. They helped a lot. I appreciate it.